your guitar.
Hello and welcome to the first of two videos showing you how I did a refurb job on this Tokai Strat type guitar, how I put the new Fender custom shop pickups in. They are in fact Texas Specials, and also how I added the very versatile Def Eddie's Fatacaster circuit, which introduces something like 15 tones to the Strat, which is great. This video is all about the doing. The second video is how it sounds.
At first glance this guitar's in a bit of a state, but looking a bit more closely I think it's fair to say that some bits need replacing and the rest probably just need cleaning up.
Somebody's kind of customised the scratch plate. I would say that they've tried to cut out a space to put a Roland synth pickup in there, a hex pickup. The Tokai pickups sound pretty good and they certainly look the part, but in terms of construction, compared to the standard US pickups, they're not especially authentic, and they use a bar magnet rather than 6 individual Alnico pole pieces. Let's be honest, this looks kind of encouraging. This is my completed wiring loom. As you can see, the 3 pickups are in place. I've got a new volume control, and I've got the Def Eddie Fatacaster kit, which from the front appears to be just a tone control, but in fact, as you can hear, it's a rotary switch and it unleashes lots and lots of new tones. Before you use T-cut, good idea to give it a good shake, because basically it's got an abrasive powder in suspension. If it's been standing for any time, most of that, or some of that at least, will have sunk to the bottom. Then really no great secret technique, just get yourself a pad of kitchen towel or J-cloth or something like that, and then start rubbing it into the finish. Really what I'm doing at this stage is mostly taking off the surface grime, to be honest. I noticed there is one ding through the wood here. I don't know if you can see that. That one, I'm going to show you how to repair that in a minute. Hey, one of these felt tips, let's see if I can get that into focus. It's called this one's a Papermate. Point is, it's a spirit based permanent marker. The other one's a Sharpie, is quite a well-known one in the UK. Anyway, that's what is going to apply the colour, and then we're going to use nail varnish to fill. It's a good idea to tilt the guitar, as I have, so that the area you're working on is as flat as possible, because you're expecting some nail varnish to stay in there. Now, strictly speaking, I should advise you to degrease the hole where the chip is. In reality, there's so much solvent in these felt tips, and then in the nail varnish we're going to apply, it really would degrease the hole itself, so there's, to be frank, no great deal of point. Anyway, as you can see, that's instantly turned the exposed wood black. It dries off in seconds. In fact, it'll be dry by now. Next thing we need is a little container of nail varnish. This started life as clear nail varnish. It's got slightly discoloured, but seeing as we're applying it to black, it's not going to notice. This is just a few minutes later. I can give it a second coat. That looks like it's pretty much filled up the hole. Although it can be deceptive, it tends to shrink a bit as it dries. The nail varnish has had a few hours to dry now, so it will be hard enough to rub down. I've got some 1000 grade wet or dry paper here. I've got some warm water with liquid soap in, just to keep the wet or dry paper lubricated. And I've got an old PP3 fuzzbox style battery covered in a bit of gaffer tape to make sure there's no hard edges, which I can use as my sanding block. My only problem is that the nail varnish is filled in so well, it's actually hard to see where the repair is, even though I haven't rubbed it down yet. Basically now it's just hard work. Keep rubbing away until you get a nice shiny guitar. It's worth pointing out, by the way, that this particular Tokai's got quite a thick finish. On your more expensive instruments, you've typically got a thinner finish to let the wood breathe. So the thing to be careful of is that you don't actually cut right through the finish and give yourself a much bigger job than there was to start with. At the polishing stage you really can't go too far. In fact, the more you do the better, really, because that's how you get all the little scratches out that you've left with the wet or dry paper. Like the original Fenders, the Tokai instrument has no shielding to speak of inside the cavities. Now I suppose if it's a straight restoration back to where it was when it left the factory, I don't need to touch that, but in this high gain world and digital recording and all that, I'd like to shield this to make it an even better performing guitar than it was when it was new. I've got a little kit here. This is conductive paint. I will say you should stir this really well before you get started, because it's got tiny metallic particles in it, and a bit like the teacup, those particles sink to the bottom. Arguably the hardest part of this job so far has been getting the backing off the sticky backed copper, which is why I turned the camcorder off. Anyway, having done that, I can now put the strip somewhere where it's going to make good contact with the back of the scratch plate and press it down. Be careful with copper foil, it can be razor sharp. Don't forget to do the jack socket cavity, because that's somewhere else where interference could get in. And when we're upgrading the electrics later on, I'm actually going to make sure that we use a little bit of coaxial cable between the jack socket and the rest of the electrics, so even that short bit of cable between the jack and the rest of it will be shielded adequately, because the whole secret really to shielding is to make sure it's complete. Before I reassemble this fella, I'm just going to make sure it all works, because apart from the fact it's quite a complicated wiring job, there's also the factor that as I've shielded the inside, effectively the whole of the cavity in the guitar is now conductive, so it only takes one tiny thing, you know, a piece of wire or whatever, pressing against the cavity and it will all short out. Fortunately, by the sound of it, we're in the right zone. Until now I'd not actually had the guitar with any strings on, so at this point I polished all the frets up with some Brasso cloth and strung her up for the first time, or at least the first time since I'd come across her. I've done my usual trick with the masking tape to hold the slackened strings in place so that I can take the neck off. I've shown the shimming process in other videos, so I'm just going to fast track you through it here. Basically what I've done is I've drawn around the heel of the neck onto a piece of paper, then I've stuck that piece of paper onto a smooth surface, and I've built up a series of graduations, a wedge if you like, using 2-inch masking tape. Some of you I know think this is immensely funny and complicated, but the point is it forms a smooth graduated slope. If you chuck a credit card or a plectrum or whatever down the end of the neck, it does the job, but there is that risk that as it's only the end of the neck that's supported, that you will in fact eventually start to get an upturn at the end of the neck. With the neck at the right angle, not only have I got a really decent action, but all the grub screws in the saddles are down as far as they'll go, meaning that the saddles are really smooth, nothing to dig into your wrist. I've put all the screws back into the scratch plate, and we're almost ready to go and find out really what this guitar sounds like, which is the next video.